This is That Guy Jig Sports Podcast. I am him, JIG. Subscribe, rate, and review Amazon, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Check us out. And don't forget about the Instagram at That Guy Jig. College football, it's around the corner, but it's the long corner. It's a long bend. It's about 106 days until we have a kickoff, till week 0. But there's things happening right now that are going to affect the future of college football. There's a divorce on the way, folks. There is a divorce on the way. At this point, the kids are already living in separate houses. At this point, we already have 2 homes. We're just trying to figure out when. But the group of 5 and the power 5 will break apart. There will be a split in college football that will once again reshape college football, I think, for the better. There's some people who still like the David versus Goliath. There's some people that still like the underdog story. But for a guy like myself, give me Michigan, Georgia more often. Give me Texas, Ohio State. Give me Clemson and OU. These are the games that I like. Give me give me a Wake Forest versus a Northwestern. Let's let the smarties duke it out. My point is, let's get Power 5 against Power 5. We're already expanding to 12 teams next year, folks. This year, we are at 12 teams in the playoffs. I understand people like to see the Boise States. I understand people like to see the Pat White, West Virginia. I understand people like to see TCU against Michigan a couple years ago. I get it. The underdog is fine. The underdog is cool. It's a great story. High five. But let me tell you something. How many times have we seen the underdog get their asses kicked before we get a final win? What happened with Colt Brennan in Hawaii when they went and played in a BCS Bowl? It's a snoozer. I mean, Notre Dame has a tough time competing against some of these Power 5 schools. So how can we expect, with the emergence of NIL, with the emergence of the transfer portal, with all the new factors that we know about, and we know that there are more factors to come in this ever-evolving door of college football. But how do we expect the Louisiana Techs, the Boise States, the San Diego States, the Mississippi States, the Appalachian States? How do we expect the Ohio universities? How do we expect these teams to compete with a Power 5 program that has $1 million NIL investment, that has a $1 million NIL bank that they can pull from? I mean, even if we don't want to talk about the elites of the elites, let's break it down like a fraction. We can go Boise State and we can go Texas Tech. We can go Boise State and we can go Arkansas, South Carolina. We can break it into tiers. But I'm telling you, the gap is huge. The gap is so huge, that's why there has to be a break. Because we're not playing the same type of football as you. I'm sorry. You don't have the paycheck. You don't have the paybook. You don't have the wallet. You don't have the funds, big men. You don't have the facilities. You don't have any of this. So we can't be playing the same football. I don't care what coach you go and get. There is not a group of 5 school that has the budget of Arkansas, that has the boosters of Arkansas, that has the boosters of Missouri. Missouri just passed state legislation. Once again, I'm going to keep you in the loop like a shoestring. Missouri just signed legislation that has it to where in-state resident players, so players from Missouri, if you sign with the University of Missouri, you are eligible to make NIL while you are still in high school. That is huge. That is a way to keep the good players of Missouri to stay in Missouri. And more states are going to start doing that. We saw what Tennessee did with the legislation of approving third-party NIL brokerage between schools. Meaning Jig can come to you and say, hey, Lawrence, what a name. What a name. Hey, Lawrence, Home Depot is going to give you $50,000 if you come here. I can tell you that on behalf of Home Depot. Thank you, Tennessee state legislation. And you saw a wave of states doing the same thing. So you will see a wave of states following Missouri. Like I said earlier, this is an ever-evolving and changing door of college football. NIL has opened up a loophole. But my point of this is we are not going to see the smaller group of fives getting the trickle down. The trickle down that was once of college football, where you saw players taking a year off, dropping down Tyrann Mathieu, dropping down to Division I AA. And then they're coming back up, and then they ball out. They need some time to mature. That is dead, my friends. It's dead. Everybody, listen, if you sign with Bama, if you sign with Georgia, if you sign with LSU, Oregon, OU, Texas, Ohio State, Michigan, you get what I'm saying. If you sign with one of the big dogs and it doesn't work out for you, you're going to a smaller Power 5 conference. I understand there's thousands of players inside the portal and not everyone gets signed. But what I'm telling you, the trickle-down effect is not trickling as much. Because if you are Oklahoma State, if you're Houston, if you're Nebraska, if you're Wake Forest, North Carolina State, if you're Northwestern Iowa, you have a basket underneath these schools. You have a net underneath these schools just so you can catch their crumbs. And I'm sitting here and telling you, if you can catch a lot of these crumbs, they're not going to trickle down much from there. And there's always going to be a pool of players. There's always going to be a free agent pool. You have the fall window, you have the spring window. You got kids transferring somewhere in the fall and then re-entering the transfer portal in the spring. Once again, how can a smaller program compete with this? If I can just go and dip into a portal to replace somebody that I need, case in point, Colorado, Coach Prime, he has not only has he maximized the portal, but I think he has minimized his losses. I think Coach Prime is an excellent evaluator of talent. I think he's an excellent evaluator of talent. I think that he knows what he's doing with the portal. What Coach Prime is doing with the portal is no different than what Bill Snyder did with JUCOs. If you remember the Bill Snyder days of Kansas State, they had some good years, they had some shit years, they had some medium years, but they had years. They went to bowl games, and that university had fun. Manhattan became a football destination in the Midwest, in the heartland of Kansas. Little Manhattan, the Little Apple. But my point is, we've seen this blueprint before. I don't want to get these young, immature kids. I need guys that are ready to play, ready to prove it to themselves, ready to prove it to America, and that are trying to change their family's life and get paid. Bill Snyder understood that. That's why Kansas State got a lot of JUCO transfers to play on those teams. A lot of sophomore, juniors, and seniors. Not a lot of freshmen. You're sitting and you're waiting. And I can see that blueprint being applied to Colorado. The difference is that they have the portal. So now your JUCO transfers are no longer JUCOs. They're actually Power 5 transfers. Or sometimes you have your Group of 5 transfers coming up to Power 5. You see that a lot in college basketball. You see a lot of the guys who showed out in the Group of 5, who showed out in mid-majors, who averaged 18, who averaged 17, 20, 20 points a game in these mid-majors. They transfer up. And then they come to Division I, case in point, Connect from Tennessee. He was down Division I AA before he came to Tennessee. But this opportunity comes once in a lifetime. You better lose yourself in the moment. And that's what it's about. And that's why I think the Group of 5 and the Power 5s will break apart. Because ultimately, the Group of 5 will just not be able to compete in the long run. Because there's no point of a player who can compete at a Power 5 school to go to a Group of 5 school. Yes, I understand for the NFL, the scouts are everywhere. I get it. I get it. Yes, they are everywhere. The NFL will find you. Yes, this is true. But you know what? Why not give yourself the best opportunity if it presents itself to go to a Power 5 comp? Why not? I think that's what it comes down to. Because, like I said, there is not a group of 5 school that has the budget of Arkansas, that has the boosters of Arkansas, the boosters of Missouri, the boosters of Tennessee. And if you want to drop the boosters of Kentucky, I mean, the boosters of Houston, Texas Tech, Baylor, Kansas State, OU, OSU. There's a big give. Nebraska, Northwestern, Indiana, Rutgers. They cannot compete even with the ones that are down below, even with the ones that are struggling. They just can't compete. And that's why you have to have a break. That's why you have to have a separate but equal opportunity. That's why you have to have that. But moving on from that, there's been a post, meaning after spring game top 25 that came out by the great Joel Klatt. Good guy. I've always liked the cut of his jib. But he released his post-spring top 25, and I'm going to break down 5 of these per week because we got to get ready. Because he has, for the bottom 25, we got Iowa, Kansas, Nebraska, Arizona, and Kansas State, 19 at Oklahoma State. Now, Oklahoma State is one of those teams that I can see winning the Big 12. I can see them being a dark horse for the Big 12 race because this is a team that returned, I believe, 21 starters. So they return a lot of experience. They have the best running back, the guy who gets all the bulk of the carries, and he's a workhorse, Ollie Gordon. They have a good, solid receiving core. They just need a quarterback that doesn't turn the ball over. Now, their defense has to improve. They had a first-year defensive coordinator last year. Defense looked like it. So we need to see some growth. Because I'm telling you right now, Gundy is putting all his chips in the middle. There's no more OU. He was already kicking the shit out of Texas, won 7 of the last 10. He was already kicking the shit out of them. The only team that stood between him and the Big 12 championship consistently was OU. And maybe the occasional trip to Ames, Iowa. Shout out to them Cyclones. But now those teams are gone, though. OU and Texas are gone. The big dogs are gone. Listen, I've said this and I'll keep saying this. The Big 12 is the only conference that there is no big dog. There is no top dog. I personally believe that the Big 12 will probably be the 3rd best conference, maybe the 2nd best conference next year in football. The brand that they're going to put out is going to be a good, solid brand that you can definitely buy some stock in. But overall, I think out of this bottom 5, I like Oklahoma State the most. Now, Kansas State is going to be a team to surprise people. Will Howard transferred out. He's at Ohio State. He's going to try to do it on the big time stage in the horseshoe. Remember, they just ran off a quarterback who went 11-2, I believe, or 11-1, or 11-2, or 11-1. You got to think about that for a second. That's crazy. They ran him out of there. It's championship or bust for them. Championship or bust for Ohio State University. But when you look at Kansas State, you look at Oklahoma State being in the bottom 25, I can understand that. Because these are 2 teams that you can see climbing the ranks and making something happen. You can definitely see these 2 teams climbing the ranks and making something happen. Because like I said, there's no big dog. I think OSU has a pretty favorable schedule. I know they go to Colorado, which is always going to be a tough play when you go up to altitude. But I expect Gundy to have the guys ready. Kansas State, another team like that had a good year last year, solid year last year. But like I said, Will Howard transferred. A.V. Johnson, he is that guy. He is that guy. If you didn't see the guy play a little bit last year, don't worry, you'll get to see him. He has golden locks. He has golden locks. The guy can do it. He can do it both. He can do it both ways. And then you have an Iowa and Nebraska, and this is the Spider-Man meme looking at it. This is the Spider-Man meme. These are 2 teams that when you look at these defenses, you just say, man, give them a quarterback. Give them a quarterback, and let's see what these guys can do. Nebraska went out there and got them one. They went out there and got them the freshman phenom. Looked pretty solid in their spring game. I understand it's a spring game, but he did throw for 200 yards. And if you remember, Nebraska probably has the greatest 3-win season of all time. This is a program that's been struggling for the past 15 years. Listen, ever since they fired Bo Pelini, ever since the University of Nebraska fired Bo Pelini, they have been a stepping stone program. They have been a program that people just step on. That's what I'm saying. Not for jobs. I'm saying you're a stepping stone. I don't want to step in the mud. You're not quite in the mud, but you're over the mud. And sometimes when it's rough, you sink into the mud a little bit more, and people get crud on their shoes. That's the Nebraska program ever since they fired Bo Pelini. And it's not because of some jinx, because Bo Pelini didn't deserve it. It's not because, the fan base is sensitive. No, it's because of the simple idea that when they let go of Bo Pelini, Nebraska lost the state of Texas in recruiting. When you lose a state like Texas, that breeds so many great athletes that you were able to get to come to Nebraska behind those big corn-fed, just behemoth offensive linemen they have up there, you won championships. Tom Osborne understood that. Bo Pelini understood that. Ever since then, Nebraska has not been doing so great. Now, Matt Rule comes in and wins 5 games his first year. That's big time. And Nebraska was on the doorstep about 3 games last year of being able to go to a bowl game. So I fully expect with a quarterback, a competent quarterback play, because you got to remember, they had, I believe, there's a span last year where their quarterback accounted for 15 of their 18 turnovers in the first 3 games. That is unacceptable. That is an unacceptable stat. So if I just believe when you have a top 20 defense like Nebraska has, you give them a competent quarterback, I think good things can happen. They've had a pretty good, solid recruiting class. They brought in some good transfer receivers. They got veteran receivers. It's going to be an interesting year for Lincoln. Some believe that Nebraska could be 7-0 before they play Ohio State. I think Colorado has an ass whooping coming. I don't believe that Colorado was that much better than Nebraska last year. I think Nebraska shot themselves in the foot a lot of turnovers in that game. So like I said, you give Nebraska a quarterback that doesn't turn the ball over. I think that not only do they go to a bowl last year, but they might hit 7-8 wins. Now Iowa's able to get the wins though. See, that's the thing. Iowa is still able somehow to get the wins. So when you have a program like that, they really just need a quarterback to steer the ship, to keep control of this damn thing. Don't take this. We do not want to end up at the bottom of the sea. But once again, are they going to be able to do more than what they've been able to do the last couple of years? Bad quarterback play. That's all you can say. Offensive coordinator had a stipulation in his contract. If they didn't average enough points, he would be fired. Listen to me. As an offense, that is your job, is to score points. It's nothing else. It's to score points. And listen, as an offense, they've made your job so much easier to put up points with the way the game's officiated, and you got field goals. So you should leave the field with some type of points every time. I am a firm believer that every offensive coordinator in college football, they call plays to score a touchdown every time. If they have to kick a field goal, they'll take the 3. But most of the time, they're trying to get the 7. So that's what we're looking at with Joel Klatt. That's his bottom 5, with A&M coming in there at 25. New head coach. Going to be interesting to see what Mike Elko does. Defensive minded. So let's see what A&M does. A&M's in one of those weird positions, man, because Jimbo Fisher was supposed to do something and he didn't do it. So now you bring in his former assistant coach, a guy who is proven. You saw what he did with Duke. So you would think with the boosters, the alum, NIL, and transfer portal, he should be able to do something. And I think he will. The SEC is going to be pretty competitive next year, folks. Remember, you got OU and Texas going to the SEC. You got Oregon, Washington going to the Big Ten. And then you got the rest of that conference, Utah, Arizona State. They're in the Big 12. So I mean, there's a lot of moves that were made, and there's more to come. Because like I said, the split is on its way. The divorce papers are getting drawn up. They're just trying to figure out what they're going to do with the grill. But this is That Guy Jake Sports Podcast, and I am him, JIG. Subscribe, rate, and review. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend, and then we can all be friends. But please hit the subscribe button. I appreciate you, and thanks again. And once again, I am him, JIG. Peace.